So,
Yeah. 1 o'clock, close enough. We can call our June 17th, 2025 Harbor Commission meeting to order. Approval of the agenda.
Move for approval of the agenda.
I will go ahead and second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any public comments? I see no one. We'll move on to the meeting, or approval of the April 15th, 2025 agenda, or minutes.
I reviewed them. I move that we approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Old business, I didn't see any old business. Anything anyone want to bring up, comment on, anything? We'll move on to reports. Our harbor master, Jeff McCullough.
Yeah, just a few things. The U.S. Coast Guard has leased a slip from the city. They had a 20-year lease. 2 years ago, they amended that lease to add a second slip, and that original 20-year lease expires this summer. So they put together a new 5-year lease, and that's being voted on by City Council this evening. I think it's a good relationship that they have with us, them being present, and also it's good annual income for the marina operation. One other thing is the Memorial Park, the North River Walk project. Our engineers submitted a joint permit application to put some pilings in to support a new decking there. That's being reviewed by the Corps of Engineers. Katie had put together 2 new brochures. One is for the municipal marina, and the second one is for the rental space. You could.
Oh, nice.
So we just thought we would pass those new drafts out for you to see.
Yeah.
And she's got more if anybody needs some, or anybody knows if anybody needs some in the future.
Yeah, I'd like to get some to the airport.
Yeah, so just stop by the Public Works office and she can set you up with some of those. We had a project done at the Riverwalk just before Memorial Day. We had some, last fall we had a short in the service to one of the utility pedestals to the shore power. That was actually a easy fix. One of the junction boxes that was below the decking had must have gotten water in it when we had the SAISH many years ago, but we weren't aware that there was a junction box that was buried underneath the Riverwalk. So we discovered that and inspected it. That was upgraded, and now that whole system has been GFI protected. So that's completed and up and operational. And then we had some issues last week with the pay kiosk down at the First Street Boat Launch Ramp. New parts arrived, I believe, yesterday, and we got them installed today, so I believe that should be up and running. But for years we've been budgeting to replace that and been trying to limp it along buying replacement parts as we can. This year they will not be manufacturing any of the replacement parts. So the finance director and I have been working on just getting a whole new unit for that. So hopefully we'll be able to do that soon. And that's it for me, unless you have any questions.
The dredging, are there any dates on that, or is it still August, September, kind of in limbo?
I think it's actually September, October, but
October, yeah.
that's still, yeah, we can get you more details, but that's still what we know about, September, October.
Have they found a site for the spoils?
I don't believe they've started looking for it yet, but that's all going to be part of the process. And I believe they're going to be PFAS testing the dredge spoils.
Yeah, they're gonna be,
So
Will that be trucked out? probably?
Well, I think they were looking for input, but it'd probably be the same spot near the golf course, right? With the-
Yeah, so the outer harbor, when they've historically tested that, it's mostly granular material, sand.
Right.
So it doesn't contain much sediment, ergo it doesn't trap any contaminants, if you will. So they put that usually between the sandbars, the second and third sandbar south of the harbor. As far as I know, that's what they plan on this year also. The sediment testing and then the potential disposal area would be things that are within the river channel. So between
Right.
kind of where the boat launch is and Manistee Lake.
If they discover, and I'm sure they will, PFAS or other contaminants, will they, that
Yeah.
stop dredging or?
No, so what what they've informed us is that they are going to be sampling those soils. They expect to find something, some sort of contamination, which is pretty common, I guess. And then they're looking for an upland place where they can designate it as a dredge disposal site, so that when they do dredge, it would be trucked and then put into that upland site. It would not be deposited back into the lake.
Okay, good.
So that's kind of what that whole project entails.
So this next one is just the outer harbor, so it's not gonna be that, like Jeff said, the inner harbor. They're gonna test that area, the inner harbor, for PFAS, so we shouldn't have to, we won't, they'll find out what's happening with it, and then they'll figure out what we do to address PFAS in the future.
I don't really share the concern, but some people were worried about the dredge pipe running across the beachfront on First Street Beach. Will they be able to avoid that this summer?
Well, there have been many people that were very upset by that. So we've had, the city manager and I have had meetings with the Corps and expressed our displeasure with that. Bill showed them pictures. And we were told prior to that project that they would not be doing that, that it would be, it may have to go over the breakwater, but it wouldn't be up on the beach. So we're hoping to avoid that in the future, especially on the 4th of July.
And then we'll let you get over it.
How's the seasonal occupancy?
Seasonal occupancy is great. Are we same as last year, +1?
Same as last year.
Okay, we had one that I think ended up backing out, otherwise we were just gonna be ahead.
10, 11?
So yeah, we've got 12, I think, isn't it?
Oh, nice.
12. So we're doing really good on that front. The transient boaters have been a little slow with the weather this month, but hopefully that starts trending up. And you said you've got a group coming in this weekend? Yeah.
What typically do we charge for fishermen boats?
We don't discriminate on that, so they get charged by the length of the boat based on the current DNR schedule, and they pay the same regardless of whether it's a fishing, sail, pleasure boat.
Okay.
And I could not quote you the
Yeah, I
rates
don't,
by foot.
yeah,
The rates are on the website if you go to the Marina page.
okay. Because it's gonna be busy down there this weekend, I think.
Permanent home for the net shed.
Is it busy this weekend?
So the net shed, we're actually meeting with the Army Corps on Friday. Their attorney's coming up about our claim. So, yeah, we'll talk to them. But we still have to figure out where, the future, where it's gonna go. That's not permitted to put back in the channel at this point, so.
I see somewhere on the agenda, a concern for additional handicap parking. We can recoup one quickly by moving the net shed.
Well-
But I know we're not at peak season yet
Yeah.
for the boat launch. It hasn't been in anyone's way, but soon it will be.
So Mr. Johnson brought up both of those items. Number one, he said it'd be nice if we could have another space there. I went and looked, I think we might be able to add maybe one more space. And then, I think it was at the last meeting, you said that the where the net shed is now doesn't take away that space from a car trailer.
There, a normal size, like 14-foot boat and trailer would be able to park in front of that net shed and still have advantage of the handicap.
So honestly, based on the expertise I received from the commission, we didn't press hard to try to move that for the season, but we do need to find a permanent location for it still.
So you're saying people would just pull up to it with their boat and trailer and it won't go back?
And they don't go, you can't obviously take a 35-foot trailer and a huge pickup truck and park there.
So to your point, after that last meeting, I went back and off of our GIS, the aerials, I measured it, I think those are like 65 feet deep.
I know,
And
it's
the
too bad we
standard
couldn't
is-
double those up.
Right, and the standard is 40 foot in the big parking lot, so.
Okay.
So it takes up some of the space, but not effectively eliminating it as a space.
Well, great.
If you turn your monitors on, I've got some pictures here for you. This is cameras that are located in Ludington, and the same company that we're working with for the Fifth Avenue pier outfit. And they've committed to putting cameras on there also. And these are live stream. So what you're looking at there is what's actually happening in the harbor right at the moment. And then and that is a picture looking straight out into the lake so that you can see the wave conditions and other activity that's going down there. The only thing I don't like about it, it would be nice if we knew what heading what compass heading that camera was pointed on, because we don't know if it's southward, westward, or northward from the information that's offered there.
Right.
And I was wondering, are we participating? Are we going to be listed as a sponsor of this? Or, if not, do we want to investigate that prior to them getting some commitments? Because they do work on a sponsorship basis.
They have us listed here, looks like.
Okay.
So we do have a concession agreement with them to operate that lighthouse currently. And they're correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but I believe they're in the process of doing design work and planning and fundraising to be able to open up the lighthouse for tours. And I believe they hope to be open next spring.
Yep, some limited hours next year, and yeah, and you can see on the website, open to the public 2026.
They certainly did a good job in Ludington. Pleased with what they have going there. And this is a tremendous boon to the fishermen in the area. The only access we've had is our beach house cameras.
Beach camps.
And they really aren't real good as far as determining what the weather conditions are unless they're violent or small craft type things. So I think that's a super great idea. The other thing I want to bring up, and it's a minor point, I happen to be doing some boating out off from the municipal the ramp there. There's a buoy posted out there at the nose of the Milwaukee, and I didn't go over to it, but I'm assuming that it's in a wake zone deal. And I hadn't seen or heard anything about any procedures as far as if they followed it or if that was just something that took place because of the ongoing situation with the condos in that area. But it's not dangerous to navigation or anything like that. It was just something that I noted.
Yeah. Did you hear anything? I didn't hear anything about new buoys. I did see one on Manistee Lake, and it was on the south side when you go out, but maybe they had, I don't know who added a couple, but
Well, this is, almost looks like a little lighthouse.
What color is it?
White,
White, yeah.
probably about 4 foot tall.
Markings on it?
I didn't get over there to look at it. I was having some issues with my boat, and I didn't want to go further away from the ramp than I could. And lastly, 9th Street launch ramp. The water level's at a point where when you go to launch, if you have front-wheel drive, there are loose pebbles between that you ended up parking on with your front wheels. And the end result is that tires spin. There's no traction there until you move approximately 1.5 foot up the ramp where you got more solid ground or pavement. And I was wondering if we could maybe look at that little 2 foot wide stretch of pebbles and see if there's anything we could do to stabilize that for boat, vehicles that are pulling boats out of the water. I experienced it, and I also went down there the next day and I noticed that there were other holes starting to get dug by tires spinning. If you don't have rear-wheel drive, or only just front-wheel drive, you're gonna get into that situation where it's loose there.
I have some questions about that 9th Street boat launch. I live on Vine Street, so I'm down there all the time. I know that last session, we talked about spending like $1 million on repaving, I believe it was First Street, the parking lot, am I correct? I noticed on that 9th Street boat launch, we don't even have a pay station down there. We're letting people launch for free. Why are we doing that? We're losing money. We even put a porta potty down there that's costing us money, and we're doing nothing to recoup. I looked at the Arthur Street launch as opposed to the 9th Street. We could really make a very nice launch, I think, down on 9th Street into what you were saying, sir. Maybe pave some of that. It's like driving on the moon's surface when you're down in there. Like the handicap fishing part, I don't know if it dock or whatever, down on 9th Street, down on Arthur Street. We could make a very nice place for handicapped people to fish right there. It only drops off, what, 6 inches or something? You wouldn't need like the great big ramp that we have at Arthur Street. You could almost go from parking lot to dock to fish. Maybe even adding another dock. People are down at that city park all the time. If we were going to spend money, I say we spend it there and really give the city something that they could hold on to.
So just a little bit of background, probably before I worked for the city, the engineering firm I worked for, we applied and received 2 grants to upgrade 9th Street. And one was from the DNR Waterways and the other was from the Great Lakes Fisheries Initiative that basically funds projects to get people access to the migratory species. The issue that happened was that at the time the city didn't own the land. And when you look at where that consumer substation is, straight from the whole width of that substation straight to the water is owned by Consumers Energy. And the city has an easement for accessing and crossing it.
To the wastewater plant, you mean, sir?
Well, just straight east of where that substation is.
Okay,
And that takes you just about to the south side of the ramp itself.
okay.
And then from there to the treatment plant was Morton Salt owned, and the city had an easement agreement for public access and access to the treatment plant. Several years ago, when the treatment plant upgrades were completed, the city acquired the land from Morton's. So now we actually own that. When we didn't own it, the city was concerned that without a long-term commitment, they didn't want to put the money in, you know what I mean, without owning that land.
Of course.
So my point is, some of that has changed now.
Okay,
There's been loose conversations with consumers about acquiring, you know, more of that. But basically what the concept was back at that time was to actually put in a concrete precast ramp or a cast in place ramp.
yeah.
And then to put in paved parking, both for trailer and boat, but then also for just the public, for car parking. And then the discussion was to put a walkway along the shoreline, and like you had mentioned, the water depth is 30 feet deep, 50 feet out. I mean,
Yeah.
it gets
It's a
deep
stick
pretty
up,
fast.
yeah.
So you could put ADA accessible piers right off of that, right off the shoreline, and have good fishing opportunities. There's also been a lot of talk about where in the community do we put a kayak, accessible kayak launch? And that would be another opportunity in that space. We had looked at doing it at Arthur Street, but with the floating fishing pier and the launch, there was not enough space to separate all the different uses. So that continues to be talked about. And then in my personal opinion, because it's kind of a rustic launch, I feel it's a good opportunity to be a free site. But I think if it improved, it would definitely garner, pay to launch type thing.
Will there be any steps taken place to push any of this forward, or is it just kind of like out in the ether and no one's?
It really takes groups like the Harbor Commission and the Parks Commission and, to prioritize those, and for us to then start, when I start hearing the Harbor Commission is in favor of something like that, when I start hearing the Parks Commission's in favor of something like that, then it raises its stature on our capital improvement plan. And then, once it's on the capital improvement plan, then we start looking at, well, how do we fund it, and how do we get local money for it, and so.
So what would have to be the first step taken then? Would we make a motion here to,
It could be, the discussion is really the first step, and then supporting that development, I would think. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a motion, I think that waterways grant, again, that would be kind of a good route to pursue. But yeah, I think this body saying that it's a priority helps us. And
I would like to make a motion that says that we prioritize the 9th Street boat launch for further improvements.
I think it's a jewel in the rough. I think a tremendous number of local people from that area of town use it. A lot of winter ice fishermen use it. A lot of people like the fact that it's free. Now, if there's problems backing in and out, launching, you need to take care of that. I guess first step I might like to see would be a joint committee between Parks and Harbor as to what we would like to do with that long range to better serve the public.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, I will tell you that I've heard the other side of the story too. I've heard a lot of people from the local neighborhood there come to me and say, I heard there's talk of improving this. This is where the neighborhood kids go. This is where I can just launch my boat and go in the lake without having to pay. And we kind of like it secret and kind of like it rustic. So there's two sides of that. And that project will be very expensive, and we're going to have to find money to match it. And, but
I understand the people in that neighborhood, me being one of them, appreciating a free launch. Of course. However,
It could be nominal.
this isn't about free.
yeah, and if we funded this without waterways money, then we can control.
Yeah.
We don't have to charge,
Right.
and we can charge what we want. When you get into what's the grant? Just excuse me. waterways. Once you get into waterways, then there become strings, tied to that.
Sure.
You can't say, locals can go free, but if you're not local.
Yeah,
Once you take the state money, then you've got to charge everybody equally. We still get to set the rate.
Sure.
But it still has to be treated equally, so. That reminds me, another thing, and I think it was brought up here, and I know, the finance director pointed it out to me as well, but the DNR has launched a new boating access site website.
I saw
And
that.
so wherever you're at, it'll show you where the public launches are, wherever you're at in the state of Michigan. And when we looked at it, it was just the DNR sites. So I contacted the DNR and said, well, how do we get Manistee sites on there? And they said, well, if you're a boating access site that's been supported by waterways, you're eligible. And so
Which we,
I had an online meeting with them and populated Arthur Street and First Street.
First Street.
So those are both on there now.
excellent.
And it's really a nice site, you should check it out.
with the growth here, an extra added spot wouldn't hurt. Developed, a little overflow.
I was up in Alberta a couple days ago and I noticed there's a kayak launch site there. And I know there's one up on Portage Lake. Do you have any idea what those cost?
I'm gonna guess they gotta be in the $80,000 range right now. I could find out more on that, but
You mentioned maybe that was something we could do over there.
I think it's an opportunity. Yep,
At 9th Street.
at 9th Street.
When the city did the land transfer for the land that, next to the marina building, wasn't there a concept drawing of what 9th Street was going to look like at that point?
So the whole concept of improving 9th Street started when there was the Explore the Shores program, if you remember that. The Alliance for Economic Success, AES, kind of spearheaded that. And the goal was back then, was by 2025 or something like that, to bring 100 new visitors to the water every year. And so what would happen is any entity and any public entity in the county could propose access to water improvements. And so what my role was to go around to those sites, and then I created conceptual sketches and cost estimates. And then for the sites that got prioritized by the Explore the Shores group, they would prioritize in a given year, 3, 4, 5 sites. And then we would seek funding for each of those sites, and we did a lot of them around the county. Arthur Street was one of them. The new fish clean station in Manistee, the First Street Beach House was another one. So, we did a lot of them, but that's where 9th Street was part of that. And
Okay.
we were quite a ways down the funding roll, and then the land ownership kind of stopped that, and we let the grants then revert back, so.
Okay.
And then there's just been loose conversation since, kind of ebbs and flows,
Sure.
but I know that the Parks Commission has discussed it as well.
The fish cleaning entrails, is that situation gonna show us ugly head this year, or?
Well, we're praying that the answer is no, but we did take steps to eliminate their processing within the city. So they're not gonna be processing off of Veterans Oak Grove anymore. They're doing that someplace outside the city limits. So their responsibility is simply to pick up the waste every day and clean it up, and that's the. He was just on TV 7 and 4 News about 2 weeks ago, talking about how that whole process and where that waste goes and the value of it. It was interesting.
Anything else for the harbor master? Moving on to Bill Gamble, city manager, launch revenue report.
Yep, so we've had the seasonal permits in May, and it's actually through yesterday. 128 for $6,400. The daily permits, 90 for $900. Of course, we have that one's pay station's down, but hopefully repaired today, so that might have played into a little bit, those numbers, but. So pretty much on track, other than that.
And on to new business, which we don't seem to have much other than maybe 9th Street and a waterways grant moving forward. Public comments, no one's come in. Comments by any commissioners?
I go by the park adjacent to the marina and the marina often, and it's looking really good, I think. And I stop by and check out the boaters' little private area. Chairs are very comfortable. Nice spots. Things look welcoming, things look ready for summer. Good job. And one other comment. In our last meeting, we talked about posting something on the door as you approach the public bathrooms about the open space above the marina. And I noticed that hasn't been done yet. I think we could use this perhaps.
I was waiting to do that first,
Freaking simple.
and then post the new rates, and
Uh-huh.
then post something with the QR leading to the website with the information.
There's new rates that take effect July 1st.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
So
Which
that's the next step.
Yeah. That's all I have.
And it gets pretty heavily used this time of year with graduation parties and,
Every weekend.
yeah.
Good, good.
What are the hours? Is it a full day for that rate, or what is
Starting
it?
next, for the rental or
Yeah.
the marina?
No, the rental of the building? If you had a party or a,
They usually rent it for the full day.
Yeah.
So they come in and set up and then
And it's actually, I think, the day, you know, you can set up the night before.
before, right?
24 hours,
Yeah.
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 Does, if they fail to clean up well, does the security deposit cover our costs for cleaning up after them,
Depends.
roughly?
Roughly, yeah.
Poor Katie's the one that usually cleans up.
No, it's been fine.
But there's been a
They're
couple times where there's
responsible for
holes in
cleaning
the walls that we have to patch and that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, we haven't had any big messes.
Okay.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Wayne? Jeff?
Do you have any other updates?
Well, I wondered if you wanted to discuss the no fishing in the river walk.
Oh, yeah, you were having,
I didn't bring the ordinance with me.
I know, I didn't grab it.
So a couple weeks ago, there was a group that was fishing on the docks themselves. And the marina attendant went out and addressed them and asked them not to fish there. And there was a little confrontation. They didn't want to be told what to do. So we had a city officer intervene. I had a conversation with the officer and said, and I said, I'm not sure if there's an ordinance that addresses this or if there's a formal rule, but I'm not familiar if there is. But it seems to me that the piers themselves are rented, and so
Right.
once they're rented, they shouldn't be accessible to the public. But I wasn't sure how that delineated, along the Riverwalk or the shoreline, to me seemed a little bit different. But we actually found, and we'll get that forwarded out to everybody, but there's actually a city ordinance under the parks, I believe, or there's a city ordinance that specifically addresses and prohibits fishing within the marina.
You don't know which one, because I can bring it up if you.
I think it's under the harbor. Is there a harbor? I thought it's under the harbor, or marina.
I was wondering about the
I don't
river.
think I didn't think it was the harbor.
We stumbled across it looking for something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, whoa, there it is,
Yeah.
I'm just listening.
But-
Anyone else addressed?
But Katie, thanks for bringing that up. So we just kind of wanted to just bring that up with the commission and get your thoughts on that. The ordinance does say within the marina, so that, to me, that's Spruce Street down to the Elks, there's no fishing. But then, is the Riverwalk from, down to Maple Street Bridge, technically, I think that's, is that part of the marina or not? I think, to me, it's no harm, no foul. I mean, if you're not causing a problem, we don't need to harass you, but if we're having an issue, we need to be able to back it up with something.
I would say between Fracano's and the Coast Guard, maybe, that's where
Yeah.
the most potential for propellers and fishing line and.
And my staff has always kind of redirected them, so they're not fishing there, but we've never had.
I think you're very
an
close.
official rule, yeah, right there.
Anyone that gets really adamant about it.
If I'm visiting here and staying on my
I think
boat,
it's on the next.
I don't, there's not a lot of privacy on a lot of
That's the difference.
mid-sized boats, and you really don't want the public walking up and down the lock,
No.
peering into your space.
And we just painted the voters only on each dock, so that's kind of the default.
I
Yeah,
don't know
so,
how enforceable it is, but yeah, I don't
Ex-
think people should be
Well,
walking
if
there.
they're
and
fishing, their lines are getting
fishing
caught,
there.
their lines, and it's a mess, so we try to keep
and,
everybody.
and this was prompted by boat owners complaining to the attendant about the people fishing around their vessel. So if you look at number 8 in this section of the ordinance, it clearly says no swimming, diving, or fishing shall be permitted within the marina.
And we don't allow swimming either.
And this is a city ordinance?
Yes.
So,
Good idea.
In a, chapter 1062 under Parks and Recreation.
it's pretty
So
much right there.
city ordinance is like city local law
Right, it's right there.
and is enforceable.
Is there something that we could post somewhere, not necessarily on each dock, but as a reference in case there was a question, you could march the person over and show them?
And that's what one of the concerns from the fishermen, from the gentleman that was fishing, that it's not posted anywhere, so we painted each dock,
Yeah,
voters only, and he's like, well, I can fish over here, so yeah, we don't have a signage down
So this conversation comes up every so often.
there. It does.
And the last couple of years ago, it came up at the Parks Commission. And they said, you should have a big sign at the entrance to the beaches telling everybody what the rules are. So, okay, let's give an example of the rules. No camping, no bottles, no fire pits, no. And I said, that would be wonderful if people could educate that way, but I just hate that it's such a big negative billboard,
Right.
you know?
Bunch of no's.
So literally, we had the same issue when I was in college working at the marina, and so instead of putting no fishing, we just put boaters only. Like that doesn't sound negative, but it has the same effect. And so I think if we found the proper verbiage, stuff could be done, but I just don't wanna, I just don't wanna have that big negative, no.
I think just, maybe printing this out, have it in the, voter area or the gas dock, just the reference would be good, but.
And then, I'm gonna forward that to the sergeant that I was talking with, and then the police can disseminate it so that they're educated on it. And, again, we're not trying to harass people, but we're trying to respect people that have a large investment. in our visiting.
I have a question. It comes. The lighthouse belongs to the city.
Yes,
The pier remains federal property.
yes.
That's all.
Comments, Wayne?
I think the security camera purpose is great. We needed something down there to see what's going on.
We're trying to get them
Good
upgraded.
afternoon, and welcome to your personal update, where you can get the weather, what's on your calendar,
Is that
travel
you?
time, and your upcoming reminders, followed by a short news update. It's currently clear and 74 degrees. Expect mostly
And the waves are
Voting
calm.
report.
But there's a lightning storm 5 minutes away. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, anytime that you can, just if they're up and there's signs that say they're there, that's usually enough to have people double think about what they're gonna be doing.
there's more activity, more people from out of town, there's a lot more going on.
But I was wondering about the one that's installed inside the bathroom. How's that gonna work?
We don't have any in the
That way.
Regarding the lighthouse, if we need somebody from the Harbor Commission to work with them or whatever, I would be more than happy to volunteer for that.
Excellent.
That's the only comment I have.
They seem like a very good group and progressive group.
Cool.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of volunteers.
Yeah.
Well, if we need somebody, I would be more than happy to do that.
Excellent, yep. Anyone else? I guess we could call to adjourn our meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I will second that.
And I'll say aye.
Aye.
Beaches are